Hello everybody, Voidmaster here. Welcome to part 4 of the What If Every Nation Went to War video. This is 20 years later, but it could also kind of be 25, because I went a bit more extreme with this scenario, just because I want to get this scenario at least somewhat done in a reasonable time frame, because even if I make like one of these every day or 2 days, I don't want to make 500 episodes of this. So yeah, just so you know, if things look a little radical, that's because they are. But without further ado, let's start from North America. And things haven't really changed in North America proper. The US still owns, like, the entire continent. But they have significantly expanded in the south. The USA now controls about maybe a fifth of the continent and probably about a quarter of the population. They've taken the entire northern coast and have now pushed as far south as Chile. Argentina is not looking good. They're still fairly large, but they've lost most of their major population basins and are now just in, like, the very south and Chile. And finally, Brazil is starting to really feel the struggle of being on the front line with America, as they've lost a bunch of their northern land and are slowly being pushed around by the U.S. The U.S. also controls some in Europe, which is our next continent, so I guess that's convenient. But yeah, that's the Western world. Same thing as before. Let's go to Europe. So, the first thing you see is, well, at least at this portion of the map, is that the US controls all of the UK now, and even a bit into Norway. The UK is not looking great. They're only in Sweden and a bit of Norway. And Finland is actually looking pretty fine right now. France is looking gigantic. They took down both Spain and Italy and now control all of Western Europe. This was probably the most radical I got with it. Because, like, would they really take all this? Maybe, but not super likely. But I didn't want to have to keep drawing increasingly complicated European borders to amount to, like, to surmount for, like, geography and other stuff. So, yeah. Just take it with a grain of salt. Take all of this with a grain of salt, or 5 billion grains. But yeah, Poland is slightly larger, but you can see they are getting outcompeted by France now. They took a bit of Italian land, they took some from Romania, and they took a little chunk from Russia, but overall not a lot. Russia has been pushed back a lot. They've pretty much lost everything out to their modern borders in the north, and they still control most of Ukraine in the south, but they've lost a lot of land. And that is Europe. It is becoming a very two-ward continent between the US and France, and also France and Poland. And yeah, the US is starting to get into this continent because they know if they wait any longer, the old world will start to get too powerful to invade. So the US has decided to take their own chunk of the pie before France or any of the Asian or African powers can get too powerful. But moving on, the Middle East, you can see Turkey has expanded a lot. They took a bunch from Arabia, they took Azerbaijan from Iran, they took a bit from Russia, and they took a bunch of the Balkans, which I didn't talk about. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Romania. Yeah, they're not doing great. They pretty much got sandwiched between Turkey and Poland. But yeah, not much to talk about them. Iran has been also kind of smushed. Like, India, China, and Turkey have both kind of pushed them west and east, but they have expanded into Arabia and into Russia, which makes them a lot more of a vertical country now. And they're pretty much just a buffer between Turkey and India at this point. They're not really powerful enough to take down either. Finally, Saudi Arabia is not looking good. They have lost a lot of territory, and, well, they probably will survive until 25, but maybe not until 30. Moving on, India is looking great still. They've taken a bit of land. They lost a tiny bit to China, but they took some from Iran, and they solidified their controls in Southeast Asia. They are kind of slowing down on expansion. They were never super fast on expansion, but they're slower than the 15-year. But overall, India is just trying to solidify its current position and use its population and, well, just population advantage, along with its large economy, to try to push around its neighbors and get a big enough power base in to fight China. Vietnam lost most of its north to China and is now not looking great. Moving on to China, same thing as before, except not really, because they had one or two big changes. They did gain more into Russia, but that's not that important. That just looks good on the map. But they made two important expansions, that being the previously mentioned Vietnam one and Taiwan. This leaves Japan in a very weak position against China, as now they're pretty much on their own with just their small amounts of territory they took from Russia early on and their main islands. Now China is planning on probably taking Vietnam and then making one final push to take down Japan. That being said, America or India is going to have to act fast before China can take over the entirety of Asia. Moving on, Indonesia is increasingly becoming also squished in, as we're seeing with a lot of powers. However, they have pretty much lost all that they can lose to Australia, as now their military and their population is prepared enough that they're probably not going to lose any of the main islands for a while. Speaking of Australia, they again haven't changed much, but that might change soon as America begins eyeing up the Pacific to compete with China. But yeah, so far Oceania is still Australia, and they're just chilling. Moving on to Africa, we can see two powers forming, really. Or three, kind of, but mostly two. And those two are Egypt and Nigeria. And the third maybe is South Africa, because they have gone pretty large as well. Egypt has lost the Sinai Peninsula, but they have gained even more out of Algeria, even more out of Ethiopia, and a bit of the rebels. This one was really just them solidifying their position, and now they are ready to launch a final push against Algeria, or maybe Ethiopia. They're going to launch a decisive blow. Egypt, either way, is looking ready to launch a major expansion campaign into year 25. Nigeria, on the other hand, did a bunch of expansion both in the last one and in this one, and now is looking to try to compete with Egypt for control over the north. Algeria they took Morocco, which gives them a bit of a power base, but overall, they are not doing too well. And just the fact they're smushed between Egypt and Nigeria, they're probably not going to do well, just because they're smushed between probably first and second on the continent. Moving south, Ethiopia is now really starting to feel the pain of fighting Egypt, just because Egypt is so much more powerful than they are in real life. Now they've taken so much land. But yeah, Ethiopia is kicking on, but they are struggling a bit, and they're really just trying to hold on to their core as Egypt begins to bite off their edges of their state. Tanzania is actually in a pretty similar position. They've begun to fight South Africa, and that's going not that great actually for them. They're kind of struggling, but they are still kicking on. They have pretty much reached their apex, probably, because at this point Africa is becoming so solidified that these smaller powers are going to have or not smaller, but less concrete powers are going to have a issue, especially for Tanzania, where they don't really have designated natural borders like Ethiopia, so they probably going to end up getting invaded by a lot of fronts. Angola is looking terrible right now. They are barely holding on. Madagascar is still chilling for the same reasons they were in the last 3 episodes. And finally, South Africa is again just strengthening their position, although they are starting to prepare for a big northward push into Tanzania to finally start to compete with the other two major powers on the continent. So, yeah, that is what we look like right now. Things are really starting to get to our last powers, and now you can probably see which powers are really going to be in a good position. The biggest rivalry, or the biggest thing that could decide the fate of this entire world, is what the U.S. does against China. If the U.S. is able to grow a power base and weaken China enough, they have a good chance of winning. But if China is able to take Japan, Vietnam, the rest of Russia, and into parts of India, they might have a chance of defeating the U.S. and winning the war, at least in Asia. So, yeah, put your thoughts in the comments, and have a good day or night, and I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.